They vanished in the dead of winter, 3 fur trappers, isolated in a cabin deep in Oregon's frozen wilderness. Months later, their bodies would be found beneath the ice. But the more officials tried to wrap the case in explanations, the more questions piled up. This wasn't a random wilderness crime. This was something darker. In 1924, near Little Lava Lake, silence became the only witness. And still today, no one has ever answered for what happened. Let's wind back to 1923 to 24, Central Oregon. The logging town of Bend sat near the rim of a vast wilderness, where winter snow could isolate even the hardiest souls for weeks. 3 men, Edward "Ed" Nichols, Roy Wilson, and Dewey Morris, decided to trap fur and live off the land through the harshest months. Ed was older, in his 50s, a logger, trapper, and known in Bend. Roy, a former Marine, was in his mid-30s. Dewey, in his early 20s, worked as a logger. They arranged to stay in a cabin owned by a local contractor, Ed Logan. In return, the trappers would care for 5 valuable foxes Logan raised in a pen near the cabin, a small but financially meaningful arrangement in harsh winter months. By winter, the only route to the cabin was by snowshoe, after the roads turned impassable. Survival depended on skill, community, and an element of trust in the remote wilderness. In December 1923, Ed Nichols came into Bend carrying a sled of furs, visibly prosperous. He told locals the trapping was going well. Before long, rumors swirled of a dispute. Nichols believed Charles Kimsey, alias Lee Collins, had stolen $500 from him. The tension grew. Come mid-January 1924, a man named Alan Wilcoxon snowshoed into the cabin to check on the men. He stayed overnight and reported all was well. That was the last confirmed sighting of the trio alive. After that, silence. No letters. No fur deliveries. No response when neighbors knocked. Months passed and worry turned into fear. In April 1924, the families, along with game wardens and sheriffs, decided to search. The discovery would shock them all. The cabin was found untouched yet stripped of life. Pots were still on the stove, burnt, the table set for dinner. Clothing, rifles, winter coats remained. No footprints, no outward signs of a struggle. But the worst lay outside. The sled used to transport furs and supplies was missing. The fox pen was empty, the 5 prized foxes vanished. In the pen's corner, searchers found a blood-stained claw hammer. On the lake's edge, snow melted around a depression, as though someone had chopped a hole into the ice. Blood pooled in the thawing snow, clumps of hair, even a human tooth. Investigators retraced a faint path over the ice toward the deeper lake, where a hole had been cut and later covered over by refrozen ice and snow. When the ice began to melt, the bodies surfaced. All 3 had been shot and bludgeoned. The scenes suggested homicide, brutal, deliberate, cold. An autopsy revealed the injuries of the victims. Ed Nichols had his jaw shattered by shotgun blast, plus a handgun bullet to the head. Roy Wilson had a gunshot to his right shoulder and another pistol bullet behind the ear. Dewey Morris was shot in the left forearm, skull fractured, likely via hammer. The conclusion was grim: multiple murders, by more than one weapon. These were not random forest accidents. Someone staged, moved, and manipulated. The investigation began immediately, but this was the year 1924. Forensic science was rudimentary. Detectives leaned on observation, witness statements, and circumstantial ties. First, suspicion fell on Indian Erickson, a local logger and moonshiner. He had no strong alibi, but after investigation he was ruled out as a suspect. Then there was Lee Collins, alias Charles Kimsey. He had quarreled with Ed Nichols over the $500 theft accusation. Collins had also threatened to kill Nichols. Logan, the cabin's owner, named Collins as a suspect. Kimsey had a criminal history. He had escaped from an Idaho penitentiary in 1915 and used aliases like Lee Collins. The $500 theft quarrel. Some historians argue that the theft accusation against Kimsey may have been bait, a way to push him into the conflict, or frame him as a red herring. The actual motive might lie elsewhere: control of the fox pen, or jealousy, or an outsider's greed. The fox pen clue. The fact that the foxes were missing, and at least 2 were expertly skinned, suggests someone with hunting/skinning skills. That points to someone familiar with the terrain, maybe a local trapper. Could Kimsey have had an accomplice from the region? Tupper's Van Buren theory is tantalizing, but weak. Timeline mismatch. Kimsey's alibi, Moffat Tunnel, was plausible on paper. But pay records showed he quit early January and he was known to travel, and a trapper in Prineville claimed to have seen Lee Collins pass through the area before the murders. That leaves room that Kimsey's movements were manipulated or disguised. Memory decay and identity. The key witness, the fur dealer, refused to positively identify Kimsey nearly a decade later. But did investigators pressure him? Did they suggest, coerce, or nudge? That kind of contact can contaminate memory. Also, Kimsey's appearance changed over time, hair loss, aging, giving plausible deniability. Unexplored local suspects. One oddity, some locals claimed a stranger had been seen near the cabin area in the months before the murders, someone with a limp or nervous gait. No official record exists of follow-up. Could that be a second suspect the original investigation dismissed too quickly? Reddit threads and old letters mention the man with the crooked steps, though unverifiable. Lost physical evidence. Over nearly a century, many of the original artifacts, hammer, sled fragments, hair samples, were lost, damaged, or discarded. No modern forensic reevaluation, DNA, ballistic matching, has been publicly reported. That's a major gap. If any tissue or hair survived, it could change everything. Motive beyond money. One overlooked angle, control over land and resources. That region had logging, trapping, and future expansion potential. If someone with influence wanted to push out small trappers, eliminating them and making it look like nature or misfortune would serve power. In short, the official story is incomplete. The records tell one version, but what was buried might be even darker. Despite arrests, investigations, suspicion, no one was ever convicted for the murders of Nichols, Wilson, and Morris. The case remains officially unsolved in Oregon. Kimsey was tried, but not for the murders. He was convicted for the earlier attempted murder of Harrison, the man he threw into the abandoned cistern, and given a life sentence. He died in prison, never confessing. The forest kept its silence. The local community remains haunted. In 2024, on the 100th anniversary, a local event, High Desert Horror and the Lava Lake Murders, reenacted and revisited theories, reminding everyone this case is still alive in memory. Crime historians continue to debate. Was there a second killer? Did Kimsey act alone? Was the motive robbery, revenge, or something political? Could modern forensics, if evidence still exists, break this wide open? Snowfall muffles sound. Trees stand silent. In the harsh winter of 1924, the wilderness swallowed 3 men, but it didn't bury all the clues. For a century, investigators, authors, and amateurs have tried to dig the truth out of the ice and snow. We've pieced together motives, suspects, and shadows. But the records, like nature, guard their secrets carefully. This case reminds us, just because a file says closed, doesn't mean the story is. Sometimes, what's buried beneath speaks louder than the official version ever will. And the question remains, will anyone ever answer for the voices silenced under the ice?